Welcome to another fun-filled edition of Second City Sports Zoom Style.
Zoom style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sydney Brown. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidK80. Once again, that's SidK80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
Hey, you can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can go to our website, weareregalradio.com, for more details on our programming, articles, other fun stuff. There's your one-stop shop to learn about all of us. Go to weareregalradio.com. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com. You can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, along with the other podcast program from War Media by simply searching for War on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and that iHeartRadio app. Wherever you download your podcast, make sure you search for War on Anchor. That's WARR on Anchor. And we're also on the Tube, a.k.a. YouTube, at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. You can not only listen to us, but watch us do our thing live. Thank you in advance for your support.
Thank you. Like, subscribe, and share. Like, share, subscribe, and tell all your buddies.
Yes. And we get to tell you guys this, the big game, the NFL's 55th edition of their championship game took place on Sunday between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are your new Super Bowl champions from 2020. They defeated the Chiefs 31-9. Patrick Mahomes on the losing side had 270 yards passing and 2 interceptions, while Super Bowl MVP Tom Brady, which clinched his 5th Super Bowl MVP title overall in his 7th ring. He had 201 yards passing along with 3 touchdowns. Leonard Fournette was the man running the football for Tampa Bay, carrying the ball 16 times for 89 yards in the score. Travis Kelce picked up 10 receptions for 133 yards. Most of that was in garbage time. Lakeena, I know you picked Tampa Bay. Congratulations to you. Like I told people, even though I didn't have a dog in this fight and I picked Kansas City to win, I raised the concern about the Tampa Bay offense with our guests over the past couple of days. Tampa Bay's running game had to be on par if they wanted to give themselves a chance. Leonard Fournette did that last night. Ronald Jones outside that goal line stand, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But Tampa Bay did a heck of a job running the ball defensively. They came after Patrick Mahomes. You could tell that toe injury was still bothering him, especially late in the game when he was just banged around. The injuries to the 2 offensive linemen regarding the Kansas City Chiefs, who really showed up in this game. They were the ones that couldn't run the ball. Let's give credit to Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. He did a masterful job. If this doesn't make him become a head coach within the next year or so, I don't know what does. We'll get into that later. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is their second Super Bowl in franchise history, the first one since 2002. They deserved it. They played a heck of a game. 2 thumbs up. Well of a job.
Well, look, I think even all of us who did pick Tampa Bay, thank you very much, Sid, for the props, but I don't think any of us thought that it would be like totally one-sided. I mean, 31-9, I think no one thought that this would be the final score. We all thought it would be a classic or, it would come down to the final possession. It didn't. I mean, look, Tampa Bay's defense, you could probably make a case for any one of those guys to win MVP. Devin White, Shaq Barrett, and Ndamukong Suh, Levante David. I mean, those guys they just smothered Mahomes all game. And, I think there was an interesting stat that came up. Pat Mahomes ran for almost 500 yards. Most of that stuff was just trying to get away from the pass rush from Tampa. So, look, Todd Bowles, I mean, some people were even saying, even myself saying, hey, can't we give a coordinator the MVP? That would have been a first. But yeah. But that was a great game plan. And look, Byron Leftwich, called a great game too. I feel like he's not getting his props, early on this morning. Well, after 12 here, but it's still morning out west. It's fine. But but look, I mean, Brady wasn't flashy. He only threw for a little over 201 yards, 201 yards, 3 touchdowns. But they did just enough to sort of keep Mahomes and them off the field. And look, Gronk had a couple of touchdowns. I mean, you thought that maybe they're going to make history, and maybe Gronk probably could make a case for him to be MVP. Fournette, Fournette, you probably could say, made a case for him to be a Super Bowl MVP. But look, I mean, Devontae David led the Bucs with 12 total tackles, including 8 solo tackles. Devontae David, who, props to him, he was there during those lean years. He was drafted in 2012. Stayed with the organization when he could have left. He stayed there and, had 6 solo tackles. Antoine Winfield Jr. made some big plays. I know people were, sort of getting on him for doing the peace sign to Tyreek Hill after that final, ended up being the Chiefs' final possession, turnover on downs. But if you guys remember, if you watched their season meeting on Thanksgiving weekend, Hill did it to him. He did the peace sign. I remember because I saw it. A lot of us saw it, so, a little context there. But look, just a great overall performance. The Bucs were dominating on both sides of the ball. The Chiefs didn't know what to do, and we'll get into all the other stuff in a second. But just an amazing performance, probably one of the best performances from start to finish of a team in the Super Bowl, and what I can see in it probably in a long time. What do you think?
I wanted to bring that up since you jumped ahead. I'll bring it up now. I was thinking about this morning. Of course, Tampa Bay's defense is a very good defense for 2020. But just for that one game, does it rank in the top 5 or maybe in the top 10, but really in the top 5? Let's look at it. A couple of years ago, the New England Patriots shut out the Rams, which was a high-power offense that year in 2018. They ended up winning that Super Bowl 13-3. That was Brady's last Super Bowl as a Patriot. Of course, you have to go back to the 85 Bears, the 46-10 dominant performance over New England. You had to go back to the 2000 Ravens over the New York Giants 35-7, I want to say, if memory serves correct. And, of course, a couple of years later, Tampa Bay, with that defense, even though they was getting toward the end of that run, they dominated Oakland 41-21. How did Oakland score 21 points in that game? I don't know, but that was a pretty dominating performance. How will history treat the 2020 Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense? If you would have told me that this Kansas City Chiefs team would have scored 9 points without scoring a touchdown, I would have laughed at you like you were crazy. It was possible, but it would have been highly unlikely this would have happened. But you have to give the Tampa Bay defense its props. But going back to your original question, do you really think it ranks the top 5 best defensive performances in Super Bowl history? We may able to say yes down the road, but right now, I don't know. They did do the job. I'll give them that, but top 5, I'm not sure.
Well, I would say probably.
Also, let's go back to the Steelers' defense of the 70s, too.
And I would even say even more recent than that. I mean, look at the Seahawks, a few years back. They just dominated Peyton Manning.
Against Denver, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Peyton Manning and the Broncos. So you got to think, you got to put them in the team picture. I think it's probably like I don't know if it's in the top 5. I was seeing some people say that, but I would say probably the top 10, top 12. I mean, all the ones we mentioned, I mean, you can kind of make a case for those, particular defensive performances too. So, I think, look, they had a great game plan. Todd Bowles, give him credit. I mean, he, you probably say you got a raw deal with the Jets, but that's another topic for another. That's another discussion for another episode. But look, I mean, like I said, on both sides of the ball, the Bucs dominated from the word go. I mean, it just it was just astonishing. I think everyone was surprised and just shocked at how dominant the Bucs were. So. And remember, the Chiefs didn't have any, Eric Fisher. It turns out that was probably the biggest loss for the Chiefs. And, you could probably say that some other stuff that happened off the field. Okay, we won't get into that too much. But, I mean, they were out-coached and they were outclassed. It's just as simple as that.
Yes, they were. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Chiefs' 2 offensive linemen there, one was out for the year. And, of course, as you mentioned, Fisher was injured a couple of weeks ago in the AFC title game against Buffalo. But that was a big factor in the game. Also, another big factor in the game was the penalties. I believe it was 7 penalties in that first half. Usually the refs let the players set the tempo. But I'm not going to blame the refs for the reason why the Chiefs didn't win. But the Chiefs were undisciplined. Yeah, you can there were a couple of calls that you kind of scratch your head. You could say that about any holding play and things along that line. Because I know the refereeing has been an issue over the last few years in the NFL. But going back to the game last night, that's not the reason why the Chiefs lost. The Chiefs played undisciplined. They shot themselves in the foot. And also, too, as we said before, give Tampa Bay's defense credit. They were in Mahomes' grill. They couldn't run the ball, referring to the Chiefs. And they had Kansas City's number. They had Tyreek Hill's number early. He only had 2 catches in the first half. Travis Kelce, I believe, the same thing in that first half. And they were trailing 21-6. So it wasn't just one factor. It was a combination of a whole lot of things.
And also just crucial drops by both of them. I mean, very uncharacteristic drops by both Hill and Kelce. So that I'm sure that did not help the Chiefs' cause either. I mean, look, a couple, as far as the refereeing go, look, you can probably say maybe 1 or 2 of those calls. You can probably say, okay, you know what, maybe they should have let that go. But again, you know, the refs didn't drop the balls, you know, that Mahomes was, you know, throwing to them. I mean, the refs were the ones that were, you know, being totally undisciplined. And, you know, I guess, you know, Tyrann Mathieu had a unsportsmanlike conduct against Brady that actually extended the drive for Tampa. You know, it turned out that I guess Mathieu, punched Brady like in a helmet, or maybe like slapped Brady in a helmet or something like that. That's why Brady had the reaction. It turned out, but look, they were just, like you said, so they were undisciplined and certainly uncharacteristic. And, you know, like I said, they were just outmanned and outclassed. And, you know, that the Bucs should be commended for doing what they did. And you could probably say that maybe playing at home might have had something to do with it. And maybe so, but you can tell by the crowd, as far as crowd, it was kind of even, maybe a little bit of an edge to Bucs fans, but look, you have to give the Bucs their props. I mean, they're, you know, I think they're the third or fourth wild card team, I should say, to win the Super Bowl. The first two is since Aaron Rodgers and the Packers did it 10 years ago. So you got to give them props for that. And they beat 3 Super Bowl MVPs, you know, to do it. So, which is the first ever that happens. You know, they beat Drew Brees, they beat Aaron Rodgers, and then they beat Pat Mahomes last night. So just overall, you know, an outstanding performance by the Bucs.
You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown as we review the NFL's championship game, the 55th edition between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are your world champions, defeating the Chiefs 31-9. Tom Brady picking up the Super Bowl MVP, the 5th of his career, the first obviously as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Breaking down the numbers, first let's go to Tampa Bay. Leonard Fournette, as I mentioned at the top of the show, carried the ball 16 times for 89 yards and a score. Ronald Jones, the second, 12 carries, 61 yards. In the receiving department, Rob Gronkowski, who many people felt should have grabbed the MVP award, he had 2 touchdown catches off 6 receptions for 67 yards. Leonard Fournette, second on the team with 4 catches, 46 yards. Mike Evans only had 1 catch, for 31 yards. Who would have thought that would have been his only catch of the game? Starting tight end Cameron Brate had 3 catches for 26 yards. Antonio Brown, who many thought would play in this game as a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, it didn't come to fruition, but he got his first Super Bowl touchdown off 5 catches for 22 yards. Lakeena, I want to focus in on the running game for just a moment. As I mentioned before, we talked about it with our guests. If you missed it, you can catch it on our podcast page or right here on YouTube at War Media. I said that Tampa Bay will have to run the ball more effectively than Kansas City. They did that last night, but let's go down to that goal line stand in that second quarter, Lakeena. Ronald Jones, even though he had a couple big runs in there early, when you got down to the goal line, this is the reason why you brought in Fournette. Why didn't Leonard Fournette get in the game in that goal line stand? I don't understand it.
This is sort of his specialty, right? We've seen him do this, you know, multiple times, and it is sort of weird that he was not the guy that did that goal line. I mean, you know, that's not really Ronald Jones's strength, so that kind of sort of threw me off. That why wasn't Fournette out there? They were at like the 1.5, you know, the 1.5 yard line. Like why wasn't he out there? But look, they did it when it counted. I mean, they scored the points. They scored the points when, you know, opportunistic. So when the opportunity was there, were able to take it. And yeah, it was sort of like the one blemish in it. Okay, they missed out on that, but they actually got the ball right back. The Bucs did, so it really didn't matter, and actually ended up scoring in the next possession. So it was kind of a moot point, but that was sort of one of those days that that was definitely a head scratcher.
It was definitely a head scratcher to me at the time as well because Tampa Bay had the momentum already. They were taking advantage of the Kansas City Chiefs defense. They were wearing them down in the run game. And so you go ahead and knock the Chiefs out early. And I do agree with Bruce Arians going forward on fourth down. That wasn't the issue. The issue is you couldn't score from the 1 yard line. I believe it was second and goal. They tried to play action pass to one of the offensive linemen who came in as one of the extra blockers, and that didn't work. So I just thought that Fournette deserved an opportunity there down the goal line. But like you said, it didn't kill him. They ended up winning the game.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the defense here. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Just I like I said before, I think it was one of the defensive guys should have won MVP, but hey, look, they usually do like every few years they give it to a defensive guy. But I mean, who would it have been if they had given it to a defensive guy for Tampa? You think?
Probably Devin White. He had the best game out of all of them. You broke down his stats earlier: 12 total tackles, including 8 solo. Levante David had a good game as well with 6 solo tackles. But let's also give credit to Ndamukong Suh. He had a half a sack last night. He really got in that face of Patrick Mahomes. Shaquille Barrett got a huge tackle as well. He provided constant pressure, especially coming in from the outside where he plays. So Tampa Bay's defensive line, they took advantage of the Chiefs' weakness, which was, as we mentioned, time and time again, the 2 offensive linemen that were out, they were able to pressure Mahomes, especially up the middle when you got Mahomes out of the pocket. And I said this to someone on Twitter last night. Patrick Mahomes, he'll probably go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play eventually when his career is done, hopefully if he stays healthy. But when he gets out the pocket and throws the ball, he even makes incomplete passes exciting because how talented that young man is. So you just hope that he doesn't have that Brett Favre gunslinger mentality as far as making dumb mistakes. He's a smart kid, but he makes plays, especially out of the pocket, exciting. You just don't want him to start doing that, picking up bad habits and creating turnovers. So the Tampa Bay defense figured out Mahomes, and as I said in the last couple of episodes, Kansas City, they could get away. They could have gotten away with running the football, but you still have Mahomes that can do it. He was doing it early, running out the pocket, but soon as the gaps were closing in on the Chiefs, he really didn't have anywhere to go.
Oh no, absolutely not. And look, they just pressure from the whole game. I mean, from the very first series. I mean, that defense of Tampa is just bum rushed Mahomes. You can tell how frustrated he got. And look, I mean, they had a bad game. Unfortunately, it happened during the Super Bowl. You have your worst game of the season, unfortunately. But all the things that we were talked about were sort of the flaws of KC. Their O-line, not having a real running back. That came back to bite them in the butt in the Super Bowl. So Bucs, you got to give him credit for sort of exposing that. And I think I heard people say, well, maybe he don't want to end up being like a Marino. But here's the difference, though. At least Mahomes has a Super Bowl ring. Marino never got back to the Super Bowl, so I think people need to kind of take it back a couple of notches when they say, oh well, he'll be another Marino. Look, at least Mahomes has a ring, so let's just be let's sort of take a couple of steps back on that take.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this too last night. People were saying all over the broadcast, both TV and radio and social media, well, Kansas City has the talent to get back, in which they do. Assuming that Patrick Mahomes stays healthy and assuming that the Kansas City Chiefs management manages the salary cap, that's what it's all about. But it is not a guarantee that they can get back here. It really isn't. As you mentioned, Dan Marino, of course, during his second year, he went to the Super Bowl, faced Joe Montana, and they lost. And people at that time said, well, Marino has the talent. He'll get back there. Eventually, he didn't get back there. Of course, the Buffalo Bills of the early '90s, which they were their rivals in the AFC East, stopped him a couple of times from going. Of course, Jimmy Johnson, who coached Dallas, came down there and tried to revive Marino's career. They didn't have the talent to get over the hump and get to the Super Bowl. So it is not promised. Will Patrick Mahomes be back? Let's hope so for him. If you're a Chiefs fan, you hope so. But it is not guaranteed, especially now in this salary cap era. Dynasties are not for long in the NFL. Your core will only stay together 3 years, maybe 4 years max. Look what happened to San Francisco early last decade with Jim Harbaugh. Look at the Seattle Seahawks. We all thought they were going to start a dynasty. Look what happened. So, for Kansas City, I think they do have a bright future, but it's not guaranteed.
Well, also, too, you got to think that the other teams are going to get better, right? You got to think Buffalo will get better. Baltimore Miami, Baltimore will get better. Indianapolis, if they can find a quarterback, they'll get better. Maybe even some people say maybe Cleveland. You got to think, will they be back? Look, but there's so many teams in the AFC that could challenge the Chiefs. So for people to say that, well, they could get back again, I mean, all the examples you mentioned, plus the teams, a lot of them will only get better. And you're going to get a fight from those teams, whoever they get, how their schedule ends up looking like next year. So let's sort of, slow down on the the Chiefs are the favorites to win, which they probably will be. I think they are. Some of the Vegas odds come out for 2021 season, but yeah, I mean, it's nothing guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed, folks. There's a reason why it hasn't been since 06, 07. Maybe like earlier than the 2000s, as to that there have been repeat champions in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but now, of course, those are 03, 04 New England Patriots. You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Browns. We break down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 31-9 win in the big game in Super Bowl 55. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are your new Super Bowl champions for 2020. Let's quickly break down the numbers from the other side. The Kansas City Chiefs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 9 carries for 64 yards. Patrick Mahomes, 5 carries for 33 yards. And as far as receiving is concerned, Travis Kelce, he had a big game, but most of that came in garbage time. As Lakeena would say, 10 catches for 133 yards. Tyreek Hill, 7 catches for 73 yards. And no one else showed up in the receiving department, Lakeena, who had a big game. I thought that Mecole Hardman would have a big game. He only had 2 catches for 4 yards. On the other side, Lakeena, your MVP, which you predicted, Chris Godwin only had 2 catches for 9 yards. But going back to Kansas City for a moment, give the Tampa Bay secondary credit. They picked off Mahomes twice. They had a very good game plan of neutralizing Tyreek Hill, as I mentioned earlier, limit him to only 2 catches in that first half. The only real threat was Travis Kelce, but if you notice, I think except for a couple of plays, when Travis Kelce caught his pass, the Tampa Bay linebackers were right there to tackle him. It wasn't a catch and run like Travis Kelce always does. He was very limited in that department last night.
Yeah. We were talking about with all of our guests, both on Friday and yesterday we did our pregame show. You had to contain Tyreek Hill. You can't slow him down, and they did that. Look, Devin White and Antoine Winfield Jr., I mean, that they just slowed him down, and really was pretty much a non-factor. Also, too, Travis Kelce, I mean, he had a couple of key drops that would have gotten the Chiefs back in as well. So that whole thing, I mean, he had 133 receiving yards, but unfortunately, like you said, he didn't have any touchdown passes. He had a couple of chances at touchdown catches, but it didn't come into fruition. So they were just, like we've been saying. I mean, not having an O-line, not having an actual running back. You wonder why Darrell Williams wasn't really more of a factor. That's going to be another thing. Or why didn't Edwards-Helaire get the ball more? But that's something that will probably, I'm sure Chiefs are probably going to be trying to figure that out maybe for the next few months.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this question to you, Lakeena, and I heard this morning and late last night. Of course, the Chiefs were trailing 31-9 late in that game. Of course, they didn't score a touchdown. Would you have pulled Patrick Mahomes from the game if you were head coach Andy Reid?
That's a tough one.
Because Mahomes was getting beat up, he was leaning to the side a bunch of times, especially in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, that toe was bothering him. I mean, do you think Chad Henne would have been giving him a spark? I don't know.
I don't think it would have made a difference anyway because it was getting late in the game, and I think you would have sent the wrong message if you would have pulled Mahomes. As like, well, are you throwing the game? Or are you quitting? You sending your team a message when things don't go your way. You just started to quit. But I outside of that, I pulling him because I know he's the future of your franchise. He's not the face of the NFL. I pulling him, I wouldn't have really done anything. You were already down. I'm just at a crossroads. Like, okay, if you pull him, I sort of get it, but if you do it, why?
I don't know. I mean, look, he tried. I mean, look, he did his best, even though with a bum toe, and I guess reports are that he'll probably have to have surgery on that toe. So you can probably tell that he wasn't 100%. But like, look, I mean, it wasn't his fault that they lost. But let's be honest here. You know, there were drops, bad play calling and all that. But the Bucs just dominated on both sides. I don't think. I don't know if Henne would have made a difference. It wouldn't have helped at all, I don't think.
I don't think so either. You're listening to Second City Sports. I'm Cindy Brown along with Lakeena McGee as we talk football in this segment. Lakeena, before we take our break, since we are broadcasting from near Chicago, let's talk about those sorry-ass Chicago Bears. Over the weekend, the news broke from a few sources, including Adam Schefter of the ESPN, that Carson Wentz is expected to be traded in the coming days. Of course, no new deal can be official until the new league year begins. I want to say March 13th or 17th, with one of those two dates. The Bears are involved in some trade talks again. And, of course, Carson Wentz, as I mentioned just a second ago from Adam Schefter, that Wentz is expected to be traded within the coming days or weeks, and the Bears' name has been involved allegedly in those talks. The rumor deal is 2 first-round picks, Nick Foles and Tariq Cohen. And of course, if you were on Twitter or Facebook Saturday night, like I was watching basketball, we'll get to basketball in our next segment. There's some things we need to discuss. But getting back to the Wentz wheeling and dealing. 2 first-round picks, Nick Foles and Tariq Cohen. Of course, Tariq Cohen came out on Twitter late Saturday night, said he called GM Ryan Pace, he called Matt Nagy, he called his agent, said, it's all good, I'm not going anywhere, Chicago, we're tied together, blah, blah, blah. Lakeena, we discussed this a little bit yesterday during our pregame show with Kyle Maines, editorial director of War Media. I tweeted this out when the news broke and said, I expect the Bears to do something like this because GM Ryan Pace has run out of mulligans and he's trying to save face and save his job because he knows that he passed up on Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson in the 2017 draft, and that the Bears need to win now. And this is what happens when you don't draft a franchise quarterback. I wanted to ask you, do you give up 2 first-round picks for Carson Wentz? I know in his second year he was injured the year they won the Super Bowl. He was on his way to an MVP, regular season MVP trophy. But ever since then, he hasn't played all that well. He hasn't stayed healthy for a full season. So I know he's a slight upgrade over Trubisky, but I'm not giving up 2 first-round picks. And Roquan Smith, which is a hot rumor now, no, I'm not. But you know the Bears would do something stupid like that, would they?
That's what I was saying. I mean, I said all weekend, like, look, this move will be so Bears. It would be such a Bears move for them to make, to give up one of their top defensive guys, young defensive guys, and Roquan Smith, sort of like an all-purpose guy. I know, Tariq said that, well, hey, we're tied together. Look, they're not going to tell you that, well, you're being traded until after it happens. So that's that's.
I hope he knows it's a business.
Yeah, I'm about to say, you're a smart guy. You know that's not how it works. I'm not giving up 2 first-rounders. No, I'm not. Not for a reclamation project. I said it yesterday. I'm not. And I see some people say, well, they don't have any alternatives. Okay, yeah. Oh, look, we know where they're not going to get with Deshaun Watson. They don't have the capital for it. They're not. I'd rather, if I had to choose, I probably have to say maybe Derek Carr because he probably won't need to give up too much. Maybe Sam Darnold, his name's being floated around too.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm not. Look, if I could get the Carson Wentz from 2 years from also maybe 3 years ago before he got hurt, and of course
Mm-hmm.
Foles took over. Of course, we know what happened. They won the Super Bowl. He won MVP. Fine, but again, you're basically a slightly older Mitch Trubisky. I feel like that's what we're getting if you would get Carson Wentz. But again, this would be such a Bears move. I mean, it's just crazy. And look, I know Chris Ballard, the GM of the Colts, is not gonna give up a 2 first-round picks,
Mm-hmm.
especially since they really are literally a player, maybe 2 players at most away from contending next year. So.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this will be such a Bears move. So I don't know how you feel. I want to know how you feel about it, Sid, because I'm seeing like certain people say, well, hey, he's better than what we have. Is he really?
On paper, yes, but as I mentioned, the injury history over the last couple of years. And number two, let's not forget, if you trade for Carson Wentz, you have to absorb most of the contract which he signed before the start of last season. And also, too, we mentioned before on the show, we'll mention on here again, the Bears are near the salary cap mark. And we broke down the salaries of the top 3 players for the Bears. Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn, and Kyle Fuller are your top 3 guys that are making the most money on the team. Khalil Mack takes up 20% of your cap. Mm-hmm. Unless the Bears have a plan to move some of your big money guys, if you acquire Carson Wentz, what are you doing? But like you said, again, this will be so Bears. Now, me personally, if I'm going to try to work a deal, I'm not going to give up that first-round pick for this year because you need a tackle on that offensive line, okay? But I would give up a second-round pick and maybe one of those high-salary guys. Let's be honest, probably Philadelphia won't do that, but I'll give up a second-round pick and maybe Kyle Fuller or somebody on the defensive line. But let's be realistic, Lakeena. Philadelphia will probably end up getting 1 first-round pick. Let's be realistic here. 2 first-round picks, no.
Mm-hmm. But
if I could get away with not giving up a first-round pick, great. But realistically, I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh no, they're gonna want a first rounder, no doubt about
mm-hmm.
it. At the very least 1, and they're not just gonna give them to you, matching salaries. That's not how it works in the NFL. So I don't know what's gonna happen. Well, like I said, we'll find out if by the end of the week, by the time we come back, hopefully Lamont will be back with us on Friday. If Carson Wentz is a new member of Chicago Bears. I don't know.
There would be, like you said, there would be so Bears, and I also mentioned this too with Kyle yesterday during our big game pregame show. I could get upset, but maybe because I'm getting older now, which I won't say that too much on this show, but since I'm getting older now, and we know how the McCaskies operate, and I said this before, they're great business decision makers, not great football decision makers. I'll say that again, McCaskies are great business decision makers, but when it comes to football, they're not. I just like that foolish press conference following the wild card loss to the Saints, where everybody was brought back, the head coach and the GM. We told you on this show that was going to happen if this team made the playoffs. Of course, it had an ugly middle there of the season. Of course, they made the playoffs with an 8-8 record. But if they traded for Carson Wentz, whenever that announcement is, even if I wanted to get upset, I can't, because we know how this front office operates. And they operate in a time machine which had an old business model from 50 years ago. That's not how business is done today in 2021. And the McCaskies don't want to operate in that mode. If you don't want to operate in that mode, this mediocrity at best is what you get.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. And I've seen a lot of Bears fans say, look, so they're gonna now watch the Bears, gonna find some other teams to cheer for. And look, I mean, we've all got our breaking points with this team, so we'll see what happens. It's just like this is gonna be such a Bears move. I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen. And look, if you're Allen Robinson, you're hoping and praying that he'll get franchise tag because I'm sure he'll have other teams. I mentioned it on our pregame show yesterday. You got Baltimore, maybe Arizona, maybe maybe the Colts. I'm sure they could use another wide receiver. Just
Dolphins.
the Dolphins, of course. So yeah, there's so many other places he can go that probably are contending. You don't know where the Bears are going to be next year, so I don't know if you're hoping and praying if you're A-Rod that you don't get franchise tag.
And I told you before on this show, the Bears are going to find a way to stick their franchise tag on him. He's going to be here for one more year. That's my prediction. I'm going to stick to it. Like you said, if you Mr. Robinson, you don't want that to happen because you fight for free agency. You fight for the place that you want to go to a new team to display your skills. And if the franchise tag is slapped on you, you're handcuffed. You can't go anywhere. Well, I can sit out. If you sit out, you're going to lose money. So you're in a no-win situation when you're a player that's eligible for the franchise tag. I brought this example up yesterday. Look at Kirk Cousins before he was shipped to Minnesota. Look at Dak Prescott, what he's going through right now with the Dallas Cowboys. Assuming that he'll get a deal done this offseason, but if you're a player, it's like kryptonite with that franchise tag. Management can use it on anybody to control them, basically.
Oh, absolutely. That's how the NFL works. It sucks that it's that way, but it's been that way for a long time. So we'll see what happens with that. One more thing before we take our break. Tom Brady wins his 7th Super Bowl ring, like we mentioned earlier. And that's more than the Steelers and I believe the Cowboys because they both each have 6. Brady is now in a class all by himself. And this has been asked by a lot of people, and I figured we might as well just talk about it for like a couple of minutes before we take our break. Is Brady the best ever in any sport? We'll leave the team sports out of it because you can break up all the Steelers and the Cowboys and soccer teams and the Lakers and the Bulls teams from the 90s. But I'm talking about Brady individually. Is he the best ever?
He's in a team photo, obviously, because of the rings, but I'm going to say the best ever, winner ever. No, only because he doesn't play defense. Of course, football is the ultimate team game, okay? Now, is he the best at his position to ever do it? Yes, arguably so. But the greatest athlete ever? No, because he doesn't play defense. Now, you can say he's one of the great leaders of all time. Yes. He's there next to Michael Jordan in the late Kobe Bryant. But the greatest athlete ever, he's in a team picture, but he's not there. You can look at the late Muhammad Ali in boxing at his prime. I know that's a solo sport, but you can look at him, of course, Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, what he went through with the Boston Celtics, the greatest winner in terms of rings of all time in all professional sports. So he's in a team picture, but the greatest athlete ever, he's in a team picture, but not for me. He's not at the top.
Well,
now you can say he's the greatest football winner ever. Yes. Not the football athlete, but for greatest football winner, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
But the top athlete ever, no.
Definitely best football player ever. I think he cemented himself in that. But you got Tiger Woods in golf. You got Michael Phelps, in the Olympics. You got, Serena Williams in tennis. You got Federer and Nadal and Djokovic and men on the men's side in tennis. So there are other, and even like a couple of soccer players, maybe Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi, guys like that. So I think there's definitely, you can definitely make a case for him being like right there in the photo with those athletes I mentioned. But as best ever, yeah, let's slow down on that. But you know how Twitter is, how social media is, sports are like, and some people are like, well, I didn't cheer for him because of this or that. Look, you got to give him his props for what he's been able to do.
Yeah, you have to. One more quick question before we take our break. Did you watch any of the halftime show? If so, what were your thoughts on the weekend performing halftime?
It was okay. I mean, I wasn't wild. I know like some people were saying that he had technical issues and such, and also that meme of him like come when he was coming. I guess he was coming out the stage. Had that like Disney with that little mirror
Yeah,
images thing, which was sort of which
I
was a little
saw
bit
that
weird.
on Twitter last night.
Yeah, it was a little bit weird. People were making fun of that. I mean, look, it wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst. I mean, we've seen worse, halftime shows. I mean, I think people need to kind of sort of step away from
Hmm.
Twitter. I know some people say, "Well, I don't know much about the weekend's music," but it was fine. I like I said, I just sat back and watched the comments, and they were some were pretty funny. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, there were definitely mixed reviews from what I read last night. But as I always say, you could take social media with a grain of salt because sometimes people are honest, and then sometimes there's people just making comments because they're trendy because of what other people are saying. So I just wanted to ask you because there were some mixed thoughts on Twitter last night about it. Like I said, I didn't watch it at all, so that's why I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, because I had in the background. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like I said, it wasn't the weekend's not my cup of tea. So okay,
Hmm.
he earned it. Whatever. I'm sure. Look, I'm sure they're gonna try to go big next year. So it's gonna be in Los Angeles. So
Hmm.
we'll see what happens in that.
All right, we'll see what happens on the other side after we take this 20-second timeout. On the flip side, we'll talk about the Chicago Bulls in the NBA. Of course, we'll get back to football with the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2021. And we'll talk about college basketball both nationally and locally. There are two Big Ten teams that are going in opposite directions. We'll let you know what's up with that as you listen to the latest edition of Second City Sports Zoom Style. Welcome back to the second half of Second City Sports Zoom Style.
Zoom style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sydney Brown. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow this show, Second City Sports Podcast, along with the other podcast programming for War Media by simply going to War on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and that iHeartRadio app. Type in the search engine box War on Anchor. That's WARR on Anchor. You also go to YouTube at War Media, once again at WARR Media. Excuse me. You can not only listen to us, but watch us do our thing live. And thank you for your support in advance. Mwah!
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your
Yes.
friends. Okay, so we got a lot to do this hour, so let's get to it.
Yes, we switch over to the hardwood. Let's start with the Chicago Bulls. They are, as of this recording, 9-13, 6-6 away from the United Center. Lakeena, they had a split in Orlando over the weekend. They lost on Friday, 123-119. Another failed attempt to come back, but on Saturday, they bounced back in a big way with a big win with the injured against the injured Orlando Magic team, 118-112. Looking at that game on Saturday, Lakeena, you had to be encouraged by the performances of rookie Patrick Williams. He scored 16 points in 33 minutes of action. Zach LaVine had a bounce back game with 39 points, including 5 of 6 from three-point land. Thaddeus Young continues to get it done. 26 minutes off the bench, he had 11 points. Of course, Denzel Valentine had 20 points, including 4 of 10 shooting from three-point range. Kobe White struggled a little bit, but he still added 13 points and grabbed 7 rebounds, chipped in with 3 assists. It was a nice overall big win for the Chicago Bulls. But it seems like now you try to take a step forward, you take 2 steps back. What do I mean? Wendell Carter Jr. will be out for the next still out with a quad injury. Now Lauri Markkanen with another injury. This time he will be out 2 to 4 weeks. Lakeena, I don't want to sound basketball common sense stupid. I'm getting towards the right side of my brain, but one, I'm glad the Bulls didn't pick up his 5th-year option before the season started. Number 2, if it was up to me, I love you, Lauri. I hope you have a great career. I don't want to see you back here anymore. You get injured too damn much.
I mean,
maybe I'm looking at the wrong way. I don't know.
well, look, I mean, he's kind of made of glass, right? I mean, he's had injury issues the last couple of years, and just when he was actually starting to play better, he sprains his shoulder and he's going to be out for at the very least 2 weeks. So, but I mean, Carter Jr. and Laurie, I mean, just those injuries are just, you just want to go bananas here. But look, let's talk about like the good stuff, okay? I mean, look, Zach LaVine, 39 points, to lead that. That was a big win. I think they needed that sort of the morale because of the way they lost that, that Magic game. Vucevic has been, picking up the slack. He's kind of been sort of kind of leading the charge for Orlando with all the issues that they've had with injuries and COVID issues and whatnot. But even still, I mean, that was a nice bounce back win for the Bulls. Denzel Valentine had 20 points. Look, I mean, I know he can be annoying at times. There are times where you want to like, yes, Denzel. Then you want to like, what the heck are you doing, Denzel? But he had 20 points, definitely a season high for him. Kobe White, look, he had his struggles, but I'm not giving up on him. He has showed flashes. I know some people say, well, I don't want White, get him out of there. Look, he's kind of playing out of position. I mean, LaVine's a shooting guard, and so is Denzel, even though he's sort of big enough to be a power forward, but that's a whole other thing. But look, I mean, he's playing out of position right now. He has shown flashes. He made some big stops late, so I'm not worried about Kobe right now. I think he just needs a year in this, Donovan system to sort of get him to get to at the point where he needs to be, and I think where he should be. Patrick Williams, a double-double. Look, I've said it before. I know folks were sort of uneasy about him when he first was drafted, but he's showing you why he was Sixth Man of the Year in the ACC. This is sort of the same thing he's doing. He up and down the floor. He can shoot long range if you ask him to. He's really good, and I think he's only going to get better. Thad Young, sort of up at his trade value if they do decide to trade him at before the trade deadline. So look, I think. Look, the Bulls look really good. I mean, look, the injuries, they stink, but there are other teams are having bigger issues than that. So, we're actually, the Bulls are actually been sort of, pretty lucky in this sense. But let's hope that maybe they can kind of put together a little bit of a run game despite the injuries. They have the Wizards tonight. We'll talk about that game on Friday. So. I'm kind of like I said before, I'm excited to see a Bulls game again. So that's all I care about.
I'll say this, Lakeena. I was going to ask you the question: were you done with the Kobe White experiment at point guard? I'll say this: he's still a shooting guard. I think that's where his game is, and that's where he should be for the duration of his NBA career. You can still be a shooting guard and make plays. So. Is he a point guard? Probably not, but it doesn't mean you still can't make plays here and there. You just don't want to have the ball in your hands all the time as a point guard. So I think eventually that experiment will come to him, but that doesn't mean he still cannot and will not improve as a player. That's where I stand on that. Now, with Zach LaVine, like I said, I think he's a number 2, maybe a number 3 on a real team that's a championship contender. But as I already said, he's the face of this franchise because you don't have the talent compared to the Lakers or the Clippers or Philadelphia or even to a lesser extent Milwaukee. So this is what you have to deal with if you're a Chicago Bulls fan. But I think Zach LaVine, as we said it all year, he's showing some leadership, but on and off the court. He's not just scoring big buckets anymore. He's actually trying to play defense and get tough and be aggressive. So that's what you like to see from Zach LaVine. So, and it trickles down to the other guys. My main issue, and we've said this for the last couple of weeks, Lakeena, the Bulls have put up a big fight. My concern is now you have to be consistent go for 48 minutes. We didn't see that on Friday. We saw it on Saturday. Go 48. You have to be consistent from the opening tip to that final buzzer. You cannot take plays off. You can't have these lashes thinking that you get back into the game and sneak out of the arena with a victory. Especially with a young team like this and an inexperienced team, you just cannot afford to let this happen. Yes, we said this season is a learning experience and a player evaluation for many of those guys. But at some point, if you want to become a playoff team, you have to learn how to win games. You have to learn how to do the little things. You have to be consistent in doing them as well.
I think they will. Look, they're like one of, not the youngest team in the league. So a lot of these guys are still learning how to play. You know, they're learning a new system. You know, they're finding their sort of what their roles are on this team. I mean, yeah, maybe all the half these guys probably won't even be on the team next year. So at this point, I'm just looking to see what the Bulls have and what they can build around. I mean, if they do decide to keep Zach LaVine and sort of build around him, fine. If they decide to trade him, get some capital, fine. Look, we don't know what Mark Eversley and Arturas Karnisovas we don't know what they're thinking right now. They've been kind of pretty quiet, which is a good thing. So I think they're sort of looking at this, lenses. And I think, let's see. I mean, look, they don't have a point. The Bulls don't have a point guard. Right? They've never had.
You don't like Thomas Satoransky?
Maybe not. But I mean, look, they need a point guard. I mean, I've heard some people say LaMelo Ball, but I mean, really, do you really want that? I mean, gosh, would you want him on your team? I mean.
I would like to have LaMelo. I don't think Michael Jordan would be stupid enough to give him up from Charlotte. Now, Lonzo Ball, maybe, but what's it going to take to get him? Yeah, what's it going to take to get him? I don't know. But he's definitely an upgrade from what we have right now. It'll definitely relieve Kobe White of having the ball in his hands all the time. He actually be a shooting guard, and he'll be more effective that way. But that's neither here or there. Taking a look at the schedule for the Bulls for this week, as Lakeena mentioned, as we record the show on a Monday, they face the Washington Wizards, Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal, who's looking to get traded, seems like every year. This year is no different since Washington has the worst record in the Eastern Conference. On Wednesday, Zion Williamson, a.k.a. your savior, as the NBA is brainwashing you. I like Zion personally, but the NBA is trying to tell you he's your savior, but we'll see about that. The New Orleans Pelicans come in here on Wednesday. That's an 8 o'clock tip at the UC. And then, of course, on Friday, Lakeena, I'm looking forward to this matchup. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and the Los Angeles Clippers visit the United Center. So assuming that the Bulls beat the Wizards, you have two tough games this week. Now, since we mentioned the injuries are starting to pile up a little bit for the Bulls, there's still tough games this week ahead for this team.
I'm trying to see how they look against those top teams in the West. I mean, look, New Orleans is up and down, but look, we'll see who's going to have to guard Zion. Good luck to that person, whoever they are, whoever he ends up being. You have my apologies. But look, I think they can beat the Clippers. I mean, look, the Clippers lost to the Kings last night. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but. The Clippers haven't really been, they've been impressive, but they've kind of had sort of a couple of head scratchers as the last couple of nights, last couple of games, I should say. Washington, they should be able to win that game. I'm sure, Billy Donovan's trying to coax Eversley and, AK to kind of like, hey, you know what? I recruited that kid in Florida. That was actually, Bill was actually Donovan's last big recruit before he left for the NBA at Florida. So, there have been some people said that maybe Beal to the Bulls, but look, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to want his services. So, but we'll see what they do. I think the Bulls can win that. Injuries aside, I think the Bulls can win that game because Washington's had some of their own issues with injuries and COVID and whatnot. So this is going to be I don't want to say this is going to be a litmus test. This week's going to be a litmus test for the Bulls, but I think this is sort of like this is okay who they are, or we'll see how they are or what they are and whatnot. And the weird thing about that game against the Clippers is actually going to be on a neutral site. Oddly enough, it's actually going to, it's going to be at the UC. So it'll be interesting to see how they do against the Clippers. I think, look, they played them very close about a month ago. They had the big lead, and ultimately the Clippers ended up winning that game. So can they perhaps maybe, pull off the upset? We'll see. I mean, look, we've seen some upsets in the NBA this year, this past weekend we're going to talk about. So I'm looking to see how the Bulls look against those teams. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, it'll show you how much this team has grown or not grown playing against better competition. We'll see that definitely for this upcoming week. You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown as we talk NBA, let's shift over to what happened this past weekend, Lakeena. I know we were all focusing on the Super Bowl, but I checked out a couple of games, and I'll focus on the national game that was on ABC this past Saturday night. It was the Dallas Mavericks versus the Golden State Warriors. The Mavericks ended up winning it 132 to 134. Steph Curry for the Warriors had 57 points and had 11 three-point field goals made. Luka Doncic had 42 points for Dallas, his career high, grabbing 7 rebounds and 11 assists. Lakeena, we said this on our last podcast on Friday, I believe. I didn't like the way Dallas played on Thursday. They got knocked around on national television. The Golden State took advantage of that, but Dallas needed this game in the worst way as they try to get back to 500.
Oh, yeah, they need that. Look, the Mavs needed this win more than the Warriors did, and I know Curry was disappointed after the game. There were some calls that maybe should have went the other way, but again, we won't talk about that. But look, Dallas needed that for morale. I mean, there were some people in Dallas were saying that maybe follow Rick Carlisle. I'm like, okay, guys, you need to slow down there. A lot. I mean, but you know how some fans are, Sid. You know that.
Yeah.
But we'll see if they can. This will sort of jumpstart them. They have to play Minnesota. The guy that they'll win that game tonight against Minnesota. But look, I think maybe Dallas can kind of kick themselves into gear here, and hopefully they can. I think they've definitely been one of the disappointments in the NBA this year so far.
Another, I'm not going to say a disappointing team, but a disappointing situation right now is the Brooklyn Nets, of course. Last Friday, they had a game against the Toronto Raptors. Kevin Durant was traveling with a person who had COVID-19. Of course, Durant has had it twice already. He came to the arena. He was told that he wasn't eligible to play. The test results weren't released yet, so he was able to play 19 minutes. And then when he came out of the game in the third quarter, he was told that the test came back. He was that you had to leave the game, and of course he threw the water bottle in the tunnel, and then he went to social media talking about free me, and another tweet, come on NBA, what are you doing, blah blah blah. He won't be eligible to play until this upcoming Friday, so he's going to miss the next couple of games for the Brooklyn Nets. Of course, I did watch some of this game this past Saturday via my computer. They lost to the Philadelphia 76ers 124 to 108. It was a close game through three quarters, but after Danny Green picked up the technical foul, the 76ers went off, and they pulled away at the end. Tobias Harris led Philadelphia with 21 points, 12 rebounds. James Harden, who was the only one of the big three that played, he grabbed 8 rebounds, dished out 10 assists, and scored 26 points. Lakeena, the sooner that the big three can come back for Brooklyn, I think this team will be better. But we talked about this last week. They still need a defensive presence, because as much as you can score the ball, you cannot give up as many points or more. It's just not going to get it done. I don't care what era you're playing in the NBA.
Especially in the playoffs, right? Especially if you're talking about you want to win a championship, you cannot give up 124 points, per game. You can't do it. You just can't. And look, I mean, the Nets have had their issues with defense. They don't have a defender right now, so maybe they'll try to find somebody in the trade deadline. We'll see what happens in that front, but I just don't see it happening, until they get somebody. One of the bright spots, and I talked about them, just about a minute ago, the Sacramento Kings. They beat both Denver and the Clippers. Harrison Barnes had 28 and then went over Denver, and just last night, De'Aaron Fox had 36, which is a season high for him, against the Clippers. So, do you think the Kings could probably perhaps maybe make a challenge for that bottom tier, so the 8th seed, and maybe perhaps even the play-in games, because they're at 12 and 11 right now, and they've won 4 in a row?
I think they can, but they got to play more consistent. I like the Halliburton kid, the rookie that picked up in the draft. Yeah, I really like him a lot. So his game is coming on strong right now. Like you mentioned, Lakeena, if they don't have any setbacks, unlike the Chicago Bulls right now in terms of injuries, if they can play around 500, they'll be in that conversation for the play-in tournament from the 7 to 10 spots, I believe so. But I believe the Sacramento is a little bit better than what people give it credit for. I know they're not on national television a lot, but I checked out a few of their games, so they're playing some good ball right now. And going back to that Saturday game against Denver, congrats to Jokic. He scored 50 points, a new career high for him. But let's be real here. They didn't have Jamal Murray, my guy. So the Nuggets are 12-10 as of this recording. In Denver, they started to turn around. As soon as they started to turn around, they take a small step back. But I think Denver will be fine. But it was just that Jokic wasn't rewarded with the victory with his 50-point performance.
And that's a tough one there for them. And that was the 50 points to losing effort. You got to give him credit for, scoring, the consistent scoring that he's done. But again, unfortunately, the Nuggets haven't been consistent as a whole. that's been the problem. Like I said, they were out Murray, he was banged up. But it'll be interesting to see where they go, because the Nuggets have been, I don't want to say disappointing, but they should have a better record right now.
Yeah, another team in the Western Conference are making moves quietly, and that's the San Antonio Spurs. They defeated the Houston Rockets on Saturday. I know, as I said before, they're going through a transitional period right now. I know they still have Deontay Murray, one of the best young players on the team. You still have LaMarcus Aldridge, Rudy Gay still hanging around, veteran Patty Mills from their championship days from a few years ago. He's still there. Quietly, San Antonio's making a move. I'm not saying they're going to challenge the Lakers or Utah, which we'll get to in a minute. They're not going to challenge some of the top teams in the West, but they quietly are making moves right now. They're 13-10. Do you see a surprise? I'm not going to say a surprise team, but when's the last time we said the Spurs are a surprise team?
Well,
Seriously.
You forgot there's one guy you forgot, and that's DeMar DeRozan. He had 30 points in
Yeah.
the win against the Rockets. So, I think he's kind of been sort of the forgotten guy once he was traded away from Toronto. But he's been making some moves, and like I said before, the Spurs have been kind of up and down. So they've lost a few in a row, but now they're hot again. So I'm kind of sort of lukewarm on the Spurs right now. I want to see more from them because I haven't seen it consistently. So I want to see how they look. I mean, like you said, this is a transition year for them. This could be Pop's last season coaching. So I kind of want to see this do this more consistently. But I've been impressed with what they've done. That was I watched a little bit of that game last night against Houston. That was a nice win for them.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Okay, a couple of games from this past Sunday. Of course, I mentioned the Utah Jazz, another big win for them on the road against the Indiana Pacers, 103-95. Donovan Mitchell leads the Jazz again in scoring with 27 points, 9 rebounds, and 11 assists. Domantas Sabonis led Indiana with 20 points, 9 rebounds. The Pacers are around 500. After they had a hot start, they kind of cooled off. The Jazz on the roll right now with a 19-5 record. I'll say it again, Lakeena. The Jazz are playing hot right now, but I want to see it come playoff time.
And that's the thing that got them. Yes, I mean, the last season was the fact that they couldn't do it in the playoffs. They got knocked out early. So I know they're probably on a mission right now. They're 19-5. They're actually up a half game on the Lakers, but let's do this in the playoffs. I mean, I know Donovan Mitchell kind of feels like he's being challenged to sort of be consistent and play better. But again, you have to do it in the playoffs. That's what counts.
Yeah, and also too, what counts is wins on the road. The Boston Celtics are on their West Coast road trip right now. They had a big win against the Clippers on Friday, but they dropped one to the Phoenix Suns on Sunday, 100-91. Jason Tatum led Boston with 23 points, along with 7 assists. Devin Booker led Phoenix with 18.7 rebounds and 11 assists. Lakeena, are you going to take the Phoenix Suns seriously in terms of becoming a playoff team this year, even though they still have Chris Paul in their squad?
Oh, well, I think so. I think you definitely can make a case for them being a playoff contender. I think, but like we've been saying, I mean, the West is so packed and jam packed. There's going to be some teams are going to be left out, or at the very least they're going to in the play-in. So could maybe perhaps Phoenix get into that that top tier so that they don't have to play the play-in games? I think they can. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the front office make another big move. like I said, I think, CP3 has sort of been kind of like the leader, sort of like the veteran, presence that team needs. And look, we're seeing it so far. They had that big win against the Celtics. I watched a little bit of that game yesterday. In between watching all the 400 hours of Super Bowl 55 pregame shows, I had to take a break for a second. I had to watch some hoops, but look, they looked really good, and they've got some big wins. They've had a few head scratching losses. I mean, they lost, they lost, the 2-gamer against the Nuggets a couple weeks back, but they've had a nice little bounce back. They've won 5 of the last 6 after that. So 5 of the last 7, I should say, after that. So, they looked really good. Devin Booker, I mean, a lot of people don't know too much about him since plays all the way in Phoenix, but he's definitely a guy that definitely is someone you can watch out for. MVP, no, but definitely, people should be paying attention to him more.
All right, you're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. As we talk about the National Basketball Association, Lakeena, let's go over some key games for the NBA for this upcoming week. Taking a look at Tuesday's schedule, as I mentioned a couple of moments ago, the San Antonio Spurs, who are 13-10 as of this recording, they'll host the Golden State Warriors on Tuesday at 7:30. The Warriors are 12-11 right now. They split their 2-game series against the Dallas Mavericks over the weekend. At 9 o'clock on Tuesday, it's the Utah Jazz hosting the Boston Celtics as the Celtics continue to play on the road. And at the same time on Tuesday at 9 o'clock, I'm looking forward to this one. It's the Philadelphia 76ers against the Sacramento Kings. As we said before, Lakeena, the Sacramento Kings are no joke. They are a young team, and I like the way they're playing right now. Philadelphia, if they think they can just walk into a Golden One Center and come away with the victory without showing up, they're going to have some problems on their hands.
This definitely could be a trap game for the Sixers. So hopefully, hopefully Doc has his guys not looking ahead. So, but look, I mean, this is definitely going to be a great game. And then remember that Boston Jazz game is actually going to be a TNT game tomorrow night. So, the nation will get a chance to watch. Should be
Yep, that should be fun. Yep, that should be fun. Looking forward to Wednesday's games at 6:30. This is an ESPN game. Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks will take a trip down to Dallas to face the Mavericks. Of course, the two guys headline this matchup, of course, is Trae Young and Luka Doncic. Hopefully the Mavericks can get back on track to that 500 mark. The Hawks, they're right around with the Indiana Pacers and Chicago Bulls, trying to battle for those last couple of playoff spots. As of this recording, the Hawks are 11-12. They are very much improved from the last couple of years.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. That should be the battle of the young guns, as they say. So that should be a fun one there. I'm looking forward to Milwaukee and Phoenix. The late game on ESPN. That should be a lot of fun. Giannis against Devin Booker. That should be a lot of fun in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm. And also, too, Chris Paul against Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday is one of the best underrated players in the league, so we'll see what happens there. Turning to Thursday, the first game that's on TNT will be the Miami Heat versus the Houston Rockets. I know Jimmy Butler's back. Houston is not a bad ball club. I know they have a new big three of Victor Oladipo, John Wall, and DeMarcus Cousins. We'll see what happens in that one as those teams are trying to battle for respect and get back into the playoff race. Another game that's on at the same time on Thursday at 6:30 will be the Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics. They had their classic series a year ago. Let's see if the Celtics can rebound after coming out that tough West Coast road trip.
That should be a lot of fun with that one. And I think Toronto is starting to kind of get up there a little bit. So it's the opening is there in the Eastern Conference. So I'm hoping that Toronto is sort of starting to kind of getting into a groove. And let's hope that it'll be a nice way to get their revenge against the Celtics. Another guy looking forward to, I know you're going to mention this, is that game on TNT. The late game will be Philadelphia and Portland. That should be an interesting one there. Great minds.
Yep, and it's Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons versus Damian Lillard. We all know that Damian Lillard shines, especially on national TV. So as Philadelphia continues their West Coast road trip, it's going to be another good one. And for Portland, they're battling for respect, and they're battling for one of those last playoff spots in the Western Conference. Philadelphia, they're trying to maintain their lead as far as the best team record-wise in the Eastern Conference. So that should be a late one there. I'll be able to catch most of that one.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun with that one, and the Friday matchups, should be a good one here. You got Zion versus Luka, New Orleans against Dallas. That's the ESPN game. Early game for those of you in Dallas, 6:30. We talked about the Clippers and the Bulls. The late game, Memphis and the Lakers. That should be a fun one. Memphis, they had to pause, due to COVID, started to kind of get back into the routine because they haven't been able to play in the last couple of weeks. They had they had some setbacks. They've lost 3 in a row after coming back. So what do you see in that game? That should be an interesting one there in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it should be fun. So, like you said, like those Friday games are interesting. Excuse me, I'm looking forward to those. So, the NBA season is heating up. So, it should be a lot of fun. Is a variety of menu of games, and now since football season is up, I can really lock in on the NBA. Excuse me. Let's turn it over now to college basketball. Lakeena, let's start locally. The Illinois Final line that they are 3-0, starting off that big way from Iowa from a week or so ago. They beat Indiana on the road without IAO, as I call them on this show. Ayo Dosunmu, he missed the game last Tuesday against the Indiana Hoosiers on the road, but the Fighting Illini were able to win that one in overtime. And, of course, this past Saturday, it was a big game on Fox. I did watch the majority of this one. They defeated the Wisconsin Badgers 75-60. Ayo Dosunmu led the Illini with his first career triple-double, 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 12 assists. Lakeena, the Illini led at the half, 36-23. I don't know if you checked out this statistic, but the Illini out-rebounded Wisconsin 28-10.
Yep.
Let me repeat that again, 28-10. And the key to that was Kofi Cockburn. He really had a big game because we talked about his struggles, especially in the game versus Iowa a week or so ago. But he really picked it up on Saturday, scoring 23 points and grabbing 14 rebounds, including 4 on the offensive end. He really made the difference for the Illini inside.
This is an impressive win. And I think the Illini is starting to find their groove. This is sort of the perfect time for them to find their groove. So I mean, they're with Michigan again still not being able to play. They're actually supposed to have played on Thursday, Michigan and Illinois, but of course, with Michigan still on pause because of COVID, they've had to postpone that game. But look, I think if you're Illinois, you got to be looking. If you're an Illini fan, I should say, you got to be feeling pretty good about your team right now. This is sort of the team that we've been looking forward throughout the season, and that grinded out Big Ten. So much depth in the Big Ten. But Illinois is starting to get hot at the right time.
Yeah, they're 13-5 on the season. They're 9-3 in conference. I think, as I mentioned on our last episode, it's a shame that game against Michigan is postponed due to Michigan's issues with COVID-19. And so let's see if Illinois can finish out the schedule strong. I believe you could check this, Lakeena, but I believe their next game is against Northwestern. I know they had them coming up soon. So if they can finish out strong before the Big Ten tournament, it's really going to be huge.
Should be a fun one. Should be interesting one there. I mean, unfortunately, Northwestern's going in a different direction. So I guess you're right, Sid. That next game is against Northwestern. So, but that's not till next week. So that's so they'll have a little bit of a.
So they got a full week off, minus the Michigan game now.
Yeah. So they'll have a full week. I'm sure Brad Underwood will make sure his guys are still kind of fresh, so they won't look too rusty coming back. A big win for Oklahoma State over Texas. I watched that game over the weekend. Cade Cunningham, who a lot of people are buying. They're buying him for next season's NBA draft. They looked really good. The Cowboys did. And Texas Tech got a nice win against K-State. Unfortunately, Kansas, not so much. I mean, they lose to West Virginia. Now they're out of the top 25. The new rankings just came out. And this is interesting, Sid, because this is the first time, my gosh, since 1948, 1949. That's the longest streak, of appearances. They're out of the top. They're out of the top 25. after 231 consecutive AP poll releases going back to February of 2009. So, oh my goodness.
I thought it's been longer than that.
It feels that way, right? But I think it goes all the way back to I believe Bill Self's first year at Kansas, I believe. So they were unranked for a little bit, but they got back into it and had to be a nice showing in the tournament. But also too, I want to give props to another local team, Loyola. They're back in the top 20. They're back in the top 25 for the first time since 1985.
Yeah, 2 big wins over the weekend.
Yes, big wins over Evansville, and with Drake losing, getting their first loss of the season, now they're in like the driver's seat in the Missouri Valley right now. Drake got knocked out, losing Northern Iowa, and now Loyola's in the top 25, and they're I think they're tied for first right now in the Missouri Valley. So, but Porter Moser got his guys playing hard, and like some people, like you said, some folks are saying that this could be like this team's probably even better than the team that that went to the Final Four a few years back. But we'll see. I mean, I believe that they played Drake. They played Drake this weekend, so we'll talk more about.
I think that's a 2-game series, correct?
The way the Missouri Valley is doing it, like I think a couple other conferences are doing is that they're doing like 2-game series, sort of mini sort of series type to minimize travel because of COVID. So that's why they're doing it that way.
As I said before, I believe it was our last episode, Lakeena, or the episode before. Loyola cannot come out of there with an 0-2 record. They got to come out there. At worst, they got to come out of there with a split.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it right now. Also, too, for all you Pac-12 fans, UCLA beat USC, I should say, beat UCLA, dominate UCLA. Now they're in first place in the Pac-12. Andy Enfield has got his guys playing right now. They got like half their team's like 7 foot and taller. Oddly enough, so if you're looking for a team to sort of latch behind, I mean, I think maybe USC might be the team. Just saying, they've looked really good. Let's see who else has looked good. I mean, Missouri got a big win against Alabama, taking over first place in the SEC. So that's Quanzo Martin's got his guys balling over there, down there, I should say, in Columbia. So Missouri has looked really good. And look, I mean, we're 5 weeks before Selection Sunday, so a lot of people, a lot of teams are sort of like fighting for position. St. John's, had a big upset win against Villanova, avoid the letdown against Providence. They're kind of sort of like on the top tier of like the next 4, like the first 4 out. So that should be, if you're looking for a team to sort of like cheer on to sort of get into tournament, I think St. John's is probably that team. But look, a lot of these teams are going to be, fighting for spots. Drake lost to Valpo, I should say. I should correct myself there. Valparaiso's got, I think that's their first win against a top 25 team like 4 or 5 years. So they've kind of been struggling. But look, I mean, you're sort of, and also too, you got a lot of postponements too. So that's going to play a part too. So we talked about, Sid, that maybe they may have to take a couple of weeks off to sort of like get everybody on track. But there's going to be a lot of games to make up.
Yeah, so I don't know if the NC they should do it, but I don't think they'll be able to do it. Like you said, Lincoln, they have a lot of games to make up. Unfortunately, money is the big main reason why that these games will have to be made up. How many can they make up between now and conference tournament time? I'm not sure. But as I teased before the break, Lakina, there were 2 teams going in the opposite direction in the Big Ten. Of course, Illinois, we talked about at the top of the segment that they're trending upwards. But the Iowa Hawkeyes, after losing to Illinois a week or so ago, they defeated Michigan State, but they have lost their last 2 games. First was to Ohio State, 89-85, and then, of course, on Sunday at Indiana, 67-65. Looking at their schedule, they do have a favorable schedule, but the Hawkeyes are in trouble right now. I know their next game is against Rutgers, who are now in the top 25. Then they're at Michigan State again, at Wisconsin, and then they wrap up against Penn State, and then they're at Ohio State to wrap up the Big Ten season as of now on February 28th. Of course, the Michigan game and the first Wisconsin game has been postponed. It'll be made up hopefully later. Lakina, do you still consider Iowa to be not just a top team in the Big Ten, but one of the top teams in the country, even though they rate 15th as of this moment?
I think they're still right there. I mean, they've had their struggles. I mean, look, give Indiana credit. They actually were able to contain Garza. which you would think that was a hard task, but they've done that.
Mm-hmm.
West Camp, missed a couple of key shots late, so unfortunately that sort of doomed them. But I mean, they need. I think they need more contributions from off the bench. That's been the problem. I mean, they have no guys in double figures. I think, West Camp and, Garza, of course, is sort of like had to kind of like lighten the load or lead the load, if you will. So they're gonna need they're gonna need some contributions, off the bench if they want to go far, not only in the Big Ten tournament but also in the NCAA tournament. That's been their problem, and they're kind of getting exposed of that.
All right, you're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. As we wind down the show for this week, Lakeena, let's turn our attention back to football for a moment just to wrap up the show. The Pro Football Hall of Fame announcements for the class of 2021 were announced over the weekend. Did you have any problems with anybody getting in? I know Charles Woodson is going in. I know Alan Faneca finally got into the Hall of Fame. Drew Pearson finally is in there. The original 88 for you young kids out there for Dallas before Michael Irvin. Peyton Manning was elected as expected. So from that list, do you have any problems or anybody who were left out or who got elected?
Well, look, I've said this since the initial finalists was announced. I mean, look, Manning and Woodson will get in no problem. Everyone else, I did the shrugs emoji. Like I don't know who else is getting in. But look, I'm glad Faneca got in. I mean, he probably should have been in. I mean, he's a 9-time Pro Bowler, 6-time first team All Pro. Look, you heard Jerome Bettis, a fellow Hall of Famer and Steelers teammates, say he's one of the reasons why he got the numbers he got. So, I'm glad he finally got his due, and I'm just very, very happy for him. And just a stoic reaction, it was actually pretty funny. Calvin Johnson, I'm a little surprised, but not really. I mean, look, his numbers sort of spoke for themselves. He was an All-Pro, and played 9 years. He led the NFL in receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, yards per game, and just countless other other stats that it's too many to count. But I'm glad he got in. John Lynch, though, I'm so happy he got in. Probably one of the best defensive guys that ever played. Won the first Super Bowl, was a big part of that first Super Bowl with Tampa. All pro. Yeah. I mean, just an amazing that whole defense with him and Derek Brooks and Simeon Rice and some of the other guys. I mean, that team I think doesn't get their due, unfortunately. And look, we know about Peyton Manning, we know about Woodson, of course. Tom Flores finally got in. I mean, he was the original trailblazer, first Hispanic to play in the NFL, first we talk about Tony Dungy a lot, but people forget it was Tom Flores who was the first coach of color to win a Super Bowl. Has 4 Super Bowls as a player, as a coach and a head coach. Drew Pearson, we all saw what happened last year. He had all his family and friends there, and David Baker, who probably has the coolest job, I gotta say, Sid, in sports. but I'm glad he finally got in, and it was great to see him share that moment with his former good friend and the former Cowboys teammate Roger Staubach. Also, I know Jerry Jones. He and Jerry Jones are still very close, and also Bill Nunn. Now, if the name doesn't sound familiar, he was a trailblazer of himself. He kind of bridged the gap between getting more and more black players in the NFL. He was, a lot of ways. He helped sort of build those 1970 Steelers teams with Len Swan and John Stallworth and those guys. So I have
Mel Blount.
Yeah, Mel Blount too. I have no problem. Also, I kind of bridge the gap between the NFL and HBCUs too. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's where most of black athletes were coming from before integration. And so most of black athletes came out of those schools. I know later Jerry Rice came out of Mississippi Valley State, but during that time it was Jackie Slater, who I think is a Hall of Fame. Of course, the late great Walter Payton out of Jackson State. So he had a lot of great talent coming out of there at that time.
Any surprises for you, or you were sort of scratching your head thinking, why did he get in, or?
Not really. I don't have a complaint about this class. Like you mentioned, we knew that Charles Woodson, Peyton Manning would get in on their first tries. But the other guys that were well deserved, this was their year to get in. I'm glad they got in. Now, looking ahead to next year's class, I don't have the list in front of me, but I know that Devin Hester's on that list. It should be no problem from him getting in on the first try. He has the most returns in NFL history.
But you know how they do special teams guys, though. Look what happened. Mortonez had to wait like 20-plus years before he got in.
I know Chris Carter had to wait 6 years, but
yeah. Okay, here's the players that will be eligible next year. Ready? DeMarcus Ware, we mentioned Hester. Steve Smith Sr., Robert Mathis, Andre Johnson, Vince Wilfork, and Anquan Bolden.
I think Anquan Bolden gets in, but not right away. Steve Smith, I think he gets in, but he may have to wait a couple of years.
I keep thinking the only guy that might get in first ballot, I know all those guys I think will get in eventually will probably be Ware. I think Ware's maybe Wolfbook, maybe, but look at the guys who did not get in. Zach Thomas. You can probably say that's the only, one guy you probably say should have gotten in, but I don't. It's going to be even tougher next year. You thought this year was tough. It's going to be even tougher next year.
Yeah, we should see what happens with that. Quickly, Lakeena, before we get out of here, let's do that hockey.
Let's do that hockey. Oh, my God.
Yeah, the Chicago Blackhawks have won 3 out of their last 4 games, including the 2-1 victory at Dallas on Sunday. Alex DeBrincat, who has made his return from COVID, he scored both goals, including the game winner on big game Sunday. Of course, their upcoming schedule for this week, they finish out their 2-game series at Dallas on Tuesday, and then they come back to the United Center for a quick 2-game series against the new division rival for this year, the Columbus Blue Jackets, on Thursday and Saturday night. Lakeena, real quick, as I mentioned, the Blackhawks are 5-4-4, middle of the pack of that Central Division race, almost at the top now. I'm not going to say playoffs just yet. I know Malcolm Subban, PK's little brother, he was in net on Sunday. He got the win. Congratulations to him. I'm not saying that the Blackhawks are a playoff team yet, but you can see this team growing a little bit. It's still going to take some time, but just like the Bulls, I want to see them play like this against better competition. And I know you were worried about them being one of the worst teams in the league. I told you no at the time. I'm still saying no right now, but my mind started to wonder, and I'm going to keep saying this until the season ends. No Kirby Doc, no Alex Nylander. Hopefully Jonathan Tapes is all right. Hopefully he plays this year. If you had those 3 guys in the lineup, maybe you'll overachieve just a little bit, but I wonder how good this team would they really be if all those guys I just mentioned were in the lineup healthy. And also, too, P.S., congratulations to Patrick Kane for being named the number 2 NHL Star of the Week.
Yeah, I just saw
with
that
2 goals and 5 assists.
Yeah, I just saw that, too. Very deserving of that honor. Look.
Yes.
Confident and confident. That's all I want. That's all I want from the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Just be confident and confident. That's what they're doing here. And I'm happy for them, and I'm happy that they played very well, and I'm glad that they've been showing that fight. But I'm feeling better about that now. Yay! Thank goodness.
Yeah. So hopefully the Bulls and Blackhawks, they won't be doom and gloom for this winter and early spring like we thought before the season started for both those teams.
Absolutely. Look, I saw a great game yesterday. The Flyers and the Capitals. The Flyers pulled off that win there. They looked very impressive. Although Boston's looked really good too, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
They looked really good.
Yeah.
The Canadian teams. I mean, they got all the way it's set up. They got like most of the Canadian teams and all the Canadian teams in one division, the North Division, as they call it. Ironically enough, they're north of the border. The Toronto's. Look, you know how some folks are. They're not that good at geography, and I wasn't that good for a little bit either. But Toronto's look good. The defending champion Tampa Bay. They're showing you why they're the defending Cup champs. They've won 4 in a row. So I'm liking what I'm seeing. I mean, Vegas has won a couple of close games. So I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing with the NHL.
Yeah, NHL should be exciting now. Hopefully it gets the attention they deserve, but I'm kind of wishful thinking of that since football's over now. We know the NBA is king, especially here in the U.S., so hopefully things will start to pick up in the NHL, and hopefully they'll get more interest. Before we go, Lakeena, I did ask you about the Super Bowl halftime show in our last segment. You mentioned something to me about the commercials. Were they worth it for you or not?
They're sort of meh.
No.
They're I mean, look, I mean, the T-Mobile ones with the weird, funky, signals. I mean, it would be ironic if that's how Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton got together, was bad cell reception. Maybe that's it would be ironic. But that look, I like the Crown Royal one with KG. I mean, I thought that was pretty cool. But some of the ones were very weird to me. Some like the Paramount Plus, the Paramount Plus one, which is a new streaming service that will be launched to replace CBS All Access.
Mm-hmm.
That that looked kind of weird. That was sort of weird for me. The car ones are they always score. I mean, the car ones are always pretty good too. But other than that, I mean, we're sort of meh for me. What about you? I know you say you didn't watch a lot of the commercials very closely, but were there any ones that stuck out?
No.
Okay.
I know I saw on social media about the Jason Alexander one. He's an actor. He was on Seinfeld in the 90s. I forgot what product it was for, but I know people are raving about that.
Yeah, I think that was a Doritos one. I think that was pretty good. But yeah, but none of them were really none of them really stuck out. I don't know.
All right, Lakeena, take us home.
All right, so you can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. That's SidKid80 once again. SIDKID80. SIDKID80. You can go to our website, weareregalradio.com. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com. And also, you can catch this podcast, Second City Sports, along with the other podcast programming from War Media by simply searching for War on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and that iHeartRadio app. Wherever you download your podcast, make sure you type in that search engine box, War on Anchor, WARR on Anchor. Also, we're on the Tube, a.k.a. YouTube, at War Media, once again, at WARR Media. You can not only listen to us, but watch us do our thing. We exist. Thank you very much. We appreciate your support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends. So enjoy the games. Look, football's over with now, guys. Now you can watch NBA, you can watch college hoops, catch up, sort of brush over your college hoops before the conference tournament starts. So you guys got no excuses now. All right. So also to rest in peace to veteran baseball reporter Pedro Gomez, who sadly passed away. Kind of got lost in the Super Bowl, euphoria, but he was probably one of the best, not just baseball reporters, best reporters, period. And Miami born. He actually went to his native Cuba with his late father and brother's ashes a couple of years ago. He shared his journey with that because his father didn't want nothing to do with the country after he and his family left. So just rest in peace to probably one of the best out there. It's been a very tough month so far with so many great reporters losing. We're losing them way too soon.
Yeah, right. Salute to Mr. Gomez, and his legacy will not be forgotten.
Absolutely. So enjoy the games out there, guys. Like I said, catch up on your hoops, both college and pro. You guys have got no excuses now. So for Sid, I'm Lakeena. You guys stay warm. I know it's very cold in a lot of parts and a lot of areas around the country, especially here in Chicago. But look, wear your mask, keep your dishes, and wash your hands. And we'll see you Friday.
Till next time, holla!